10 Best Picks presents the top 10 best mirrorless cameras. Starting at number 10. Canon EOS R5. One of the most popular and exciting cameras in recent memory, the Canon EOS R5 is a true statement piece and is helping to cement Canon's position as a leader in the world of mirrorless after spending so many years at the top of the SLR world. Sporting an impressive 45MP full-frame CMOS sensor, the R5 is capable of recording 8K RAW video, 4K at 120fps with 422 10-bit sampling, 12 fps full-res shooting, and it is also the first EOS camera to feature IBIS. The sensor's design also incorporates a 1053-point phase detection dual-pixel CMOS AF2 focusing system, which uses deep learning technology for apt subject tracking and detection capabilities. And, beyond imaging performance, the R5 is also a standout with its robust physical design, huge 5.76 meters. Electronic viewfinder with 120 fps refresh rate, vari-angle 3.2 touchscreen LCD, dual CFX Type B and South Dakota US 2 card slots, and wireless connectivity. What makes the EOS R5 so special is that it has top range features for both photo and video. It's as if you took two niche cameras, one high-res photo-optimized model and one speedy video-optimized model, and combined them for the utmost versatility. But there's little else to really complain about. As a true photographer's workhorse, the Canon EOS R5 gets out of your way and lets you accomplish what you need to. That could include photographing sports, action, portraits in the studio, fast fleeting family moments, and so on, and your images will most likely be accurately focused at 45 megapixels. At number 9. Sony Alpha A7's III. When Sony finally launched the Alpha A7's III in the middle of 2020, I think many video shooters and camera enthusiasts finally breathed a sigh of relief. It's the camera that had been rumored, desired, and speculated about for years, and at last it was official. In simple terms, this camera revolves around a revised 12.1MP sensor and Bions XR processor, which yield improved sensitivity, speed, and, of course, video capabilities. UHD 4K 120p recording with internal 10-bit 422 sampling is the headline feature, but, digging a bit more, the A7's III also offers 16-bit RAW output over the full-size HDMI port, greatly reduced rolling shutter and faster readout speeds, and more flexible control with recording modes like HLG, SLOG2, SLOG3. And beyond just pure video specifications, it's also the first mirrorless camera to feature a 9.44 meters OLED EVF. It's the first A7 series camera to sport an articulating touchscreen LCD, and it's the first camera to support the QFEXpress Type A memory card format. It's an exciting release for sure, and definitely takes the video crown of 2020. Well, maybe there are a couple of tiny limitations, but we can forgive them from a small camera that can shoot at 4K 60p full frame internally with no crop, in 10-bit 422, with no limits on recording time, and little potential to overheat. Number 8 of my list. Fujifilm X-T4. Early in 2020, Fujifilm launched the fourth iteration of its range-topping APS-C format mirrorless camera, the X-T4. Delving further into multimedia territory, the X-T4 is one of the most flexible cameras out there, with seemingly equal appeal to photographers and videographers alike. A 26.1MP X-Trans CMOS 4 sensor lends a distinct image quality due to the unique sensor structure and film simulation capabilities. Paired with an X processor 4, it's also one of the speedier cameras around, with 15 fps mechanical shooting, DCI UHD 4K video up to 60 fps, and FHD at 240 fps, as well as ISO 160 to 12800 sensitivity, and a 425-point phase detection AF system. Other improvements for this generation include 10-bit 422 recording to an external recorder, F-Log Gamma support, up 6.5-stop effective IBIS, and a better EVF for clearer viewing. All of this tech is then crammed into one of the more stylish cameras around, something Fujifilm is known for, which makes the X-T4 an unassuming and appealing flagship camera. The X-T4 doesn't have the X-H1's very deep hand grip or top information display, but it pushes the concept of a hybrid stills video camera further. Its sensor is a generation newer, so it can push 60 frames per second at 4K and up to 240 frames at 1080p, and it wisely lets you dial in different settings for each medium, flipping between the two with a single toggle switch. Coming at number 7. Nikon Z6 II. Nikon's first generation of full-frame mirrorless cameras was made up of immensely popular and well-regarded models, with a few criticisms that stuck out. The second generation Nikon Z6 II sets out to correct those foibles while bringing improved processing power and speed. To be clear, the Z6 II is an iterative update of the original Z6, and many of the features remain the same. 24. 5MP BSI CMOS sensor, 273.5, 3. 6 meters. OLED EVF, and 3. 1 meter. Tilting touchscreen. What separates the second generation, though, is 2x speed 6 image processors, 2 memory card slots, and 2 extra FPS for a top 14 FPS shooting rate. Enhanced processing also seeks to improve autofocus performance, as well as bring 4K 60fps video recording and support for HLG recording. While I'm calling out the Z6 II for the number 4 spot, I'll also mention that the Z7 II received the same upgrades from the first-gen Z7. They are both improved cameras, but, for me, the Z6 II is the more appealing of the two models, since its feature set is more geared for general use. The higher resolution of the Z7 II is great if you need it, and you likely already know if you're someone who does need it, but for most of us, the Z6 II is going to be the model to check out. Physical controls are supplemented with an on-screen menu, launched via the I button. It gives ready access to up to 12 additional functions, with a smart set of defaults and complete customizability. You'll be able to customize separate menus for video or still capture. The Z6 II splits the functions via a toggle switch, handy as the shutter speeds used for video and stills are often different. At number 6. Leica M10R 40MP. Leica is rarely the brand to push the envelope, choosing, instead, to stay its course and produce the cameras that have generated envy for years. The M10R digital rangefinder splits the difference of classic appeal with an updated sensor that brings this camera right into contemporary relevance. Breaking the 24MP barrier, the M10R features an impressive 40MP full-frame CMOS sensor and also adds improved long exposure capabilities, making this an enticing rangefinder for landscape and nature shooters, as well as the expected street and documentary crowds. Also, it's worth mentioning that, earlier in 2020, Leica did launch the 40MP M monochrome as the true first high-res rangefinder, but with its grayscale-only sensor, it falls into more of a niche category than the general-use, full-color M10R. The 40-89MP full-frame CMOS sensor is essentially the same sensor that is in the M10 monochrome, but the M10R features a color filter array. For most photographers, this is a necessity, as a black and white only camera can feel a bit too niche. Whereas a color camera has the opportunity to dial it back to black and white, albeit a not as striking black and white, it's much more difficult to make the transition the other way. A more realistic comparison in all likelihood is between something like the M10P and the M10R, or color 24MP versus color 40MP. What is this extra resolution really getting you? It's not exactly a new concept when you look outside the world of Leica, but within Leica, it's a boundary that is finally being crossed. And the M10R is probably the best example of Leica going high-res to great effect. In terms of full-frame cameras, it broke the 24MP barrier with the Q2, then the SL2, then, surprisingly, with the M10 monochrome. But each of these three cameras is a more specialized model, whereas the M10R is the Leica camera. It's their bread and butter and is the type of camera you expect and want from Leica. For more information and price, check out the product links in description underneath the video. Halfway of my listed number 5. Panasonic LUMIX S5. When Panasonic made its entrance into the full-frame mirrorless market in 2019, with the S1 and S1R, one of the standout aspects of those cameras, apart from their impressive specs, was the great size and heft of them. Enter the LUMIX DCS5, which is effectively smaller and lighter, but with similarly impressive capabilities. Its 24. 2MP CMOS sensor affords UHD 4K 60 10-bit internal video, dual native ISO support, and a wide 14+ stop dynamic range, along with sensitivity to ISO 51200, 7 fps shooting, and 5-axis IBIS. It's quite the capable camera for photo and video, and the reduced size makes it a friendlier choice for walk-around shooting or travel applications. The S5's controls are absolutely pro-grade. It sports front and rear dials on the top plate, as well as a flat command dial on the rear, so you can take full control over exposure, and there are switches to toggle drive mode, focus mode, and an AF-on button, settings you'll adjust when photographing different subjects. Buttons and dials have a good feel, they respond with confidence, and no mush at all. They're supplemented by a smart on-screen interface, activated by the Q button. It gives touch access to another dozen options and is fully customizable. The LCD flips out to face forward, up, or down. An eye sensor switches between it and the eye level EVF automatically, and you have the option of closing the rear screen in for full-time EVF use and to keep it from picking up scuffs. It's sensitive to touch and packs 1.84 million dots into a 3-inch frame. Coming in at number 4 of my list. Sony Alpha A7C. The Sony A7 series is essentially the foundation of the full-frame mirrorless ecosystem, and the company's 3-tiered approach to camera positioning is something that's been emulated by other manufacturers in recent times. With the Alpha A7C, though, Sony has broken its own mold and added a 4th component to the A7 lineup of cameras. The A7, A7R, and A7's cameras all share a relatively similar form factor and differ mainly on performance. The A7C, on the other hand, sports a newly designed body that more closely resembles the A6000 series of APS-C cameras. Beyond the compact size, the A7C is just a solid mid-range camera, with much of the feature set of the A7 III, including the 24. 2MP more RBSI CMOS sensor, UHD 4K video, sensitivity to ISO 200-4800, 693 AF, and 5-axis IBIS. It does have a smaller viewfinder and a new side-opening LCD, as well, to further physically distinguish itself in the lineup. There are a wide range of E-mount lenses available, but perhaps of most interest to people who are buying the A7C for its size is the new 28-60mm f4-5.6 zoom lens. This is an extending design that can be collapsed to make it smaller when not in use. When extended, the lens stretches out by roughly another inch. For stills photography, there are creative styles that let you pick the color, such as vivid, standard, landscape, neutral, etc., with options for contrast, saturation, and sharpness. There are picture effects where you'll find the digital filters, with toy camera and other creative filters. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and NFC are built in, and NFC can be used to more quickly connect to your smartphone if your phone has NFC built in. If yours doesn't, then you can use a QR code displayed on the camera to set up the initial connection. At number 3. Canon EOS R6 Full Frame. Canon had a huge 2-camera announcement in the middle of 2020, and the overshadowed, hidden gem of that launch is the EOS R6. If this camera were launched on its own, it would be a showstopper due to its revised 20MP full-frame sensor, impressive 12 fps shooting, DCI 4K 60 video, 5-axis IBIS, and updated dual-pixel CMOS f2. While its bigger brother, the R5, took the headlines, the R6 is a sneaky good camera for the majority of photographers out there. It's lacking the dazzling specs of other cameras, which has kept it a bit under the radar, but it's just a solid, no-frills camera for both photo and video use at a high level. The Canon EOS R6 attained a relatively high XOMark sensor rating with a result of 90 points that places it in 31st place overall in our database of full-frame and MF sensors, in 29th place for full-frame 35mm, and in 3rd place for Canon sensors. Canon's choice of 20MP sensor seems slightly at odds with rivals' 24MP sensors in this mid-range category, but it is not that different in spatial resolution and helps with fast readout and with keeping noise levels manageable. When comparing sensor performance using XOMark scores, however, it is important to keep in mind that a variation of 5 points equates to a 1/3 stop difference in sensitivity, so there's just over a 1/3 stop improvement in sensitivity between the Canon EOS R6 and Sony A7 III. Against other models in Canon's lineup, the R6's sensor performance is very similar to that of the EOS 1DX Mark III. Further, the familiar pixel count of 20 MP suggests that Canon uses the same sensor, or a variant of it in the EOS R6. For more information and price, check out the product links in description underneath the video. Coming at number 2, Fujifilm X-S10 mirrorless camera. Fujifilm cameras are some of the most distinguishable in the industry, characterized by retro looks and attention to tactility. The new X-S10 doesn't shy away from this, but does bring more ergonomics and familiarity to this design language. Borrowing many of Fujifilm's flagship X-T4 camera's capabilities, the X-S10 is exactly what you want in a mid-range camera, same 26.1 MP APS-C Trans BSICMOS4 sensor as the X-T4 with a smaller, friendlier interface and more pronounced grip. It has similar DCI UHD 4K video capabilities and apt-on-chip phase detection AF, but it doesn't have quite the speed or quality of EVF or LCD of the top end. Summarized, though, the X-S10 has everything that most people want for most shooting situations and is a tremendous value. The Fujifilm X-S10's design is simultaneously vintage Fujifilm and a big change from its other mirrorless cameras. At first glance, it looks like a slightly smaller Fujifilm X-T4 with a larger, deeper grip. Because of that grip, the size difference isn't, in practical terms, much different from the X-T4. It's only really when you come to use the X-S10 that you notice the big changes from the rest of the X series. Fujifilm cameras are renowned for their dial-heavy approach to controls, with most offering a triplet of wheels for tweaking your shutter speed, ISO, and exposure compensation. And number 1. Panasonic LUMIX G100. Taking the 10th spot is Panasonic's LUMIX DC-G100, which is the sole micro four thirds camera to make the list. What sets this camera apart from other cameras this year is its vlogging-specific feature set and attention to detail. Whereas other vlogging cams might add an extra feature here and there, Panasonic went ahead and did everything right with this one. It's small for everyday use, has capable 4K recording for pretty much any web playback method, and has enhanced OZO audio for improved sound quality. Also, 5-axis IBIS, a free-angle touchscreen for front-facing use, and even a vlogging-specific UI make it great for single-person productions. We're often asked what the best camera is or what's a good professional camera for someone who's looking to make the step up from a phone. But all too often the answer to the first question for a lot of people really isn't a camera, it's a better phone. But if we unpick the word professional from the second question, what do people mean? They want something that feels like a step up. They want proper camera ergonomics and functionality like full manual control with dials. They want the ability to change lenses to suit different photographic challenges. And this is where I think the G100 has done well. When trying to appeal to smartphone social media creatives, a lot of companies strip back all of the controls. Then they put a half-decent sensor in a tiny camera body and release it in white. A 23-megapixel live MOS sensor sits at the heart of the G100, capable of recording high-quality 4K 30p video. It can also record full HD video at up to 120 FPS for dramatic slow-motion clips. For more information and price, check out the product links in description underneath the video. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe my channel, share this video and hit the like button.